Hello and welcome to the live this evening. We'll carry on our 30-day 30 Microsoft 365 tips, and today is going to be a very brief overview of some of the questions you should be asking yourself before you decide to set up Microsoft 365, or some of these questions are also pertinent. Maybe you've set up Microsoft 365 and you don't think it's set up in the correct way, or you think that you're not getting the most out of it. So these steps would also help you to kind of review how your setup is going and some of the things you might need to adjust in order to get it to do, kind of some of the things that you were hoping you would get out of it in the beginning. So without further ado, I'm going to, as usual, share my screen with you. So I've prepared a few points, and this is going to be really simple. And we'd love you to really, kind of come up with your own questions as well. So, if you're watching this, welcome on the live and also welcome on the recording. So, put your comments either to us in this live, or also feel free to put your comments on the video, either if you're watching it in YouTube or whether you're watching it on Facebook, and we'll get back to you with an answer on those comments or those questions that you make. Okay, so let's share my screen here. So I'm going to take you through 4 main points. And here we are. So some of the main points that we should be thinking about when we look to start or review a Microsoft 365 implementation. And I think number one, really, it does have something to do with Microsoft 365 because it's what you want Microsoft 365 to give you at the end of the day. But I can't stress this one enough, and it's to set your expectations. So decide what you're looking for, why you're looking for it, what do you want it to do for you? What are the kind of apps that you're looking to move into? Microsoft 365, for example. Why do you think Microsoft 365 is going to give you the advantages over maybe the system that you're using at the moment? Or maybe if you're a new business, maybe you're looking at this from the perspective of, how do I get myself set up for these kind of email, productivity tools, sharing tools, all of those kind of things. So depending on where you're looking at it from, you will have different expectations, and there will be different difficulties in terms of getting things set up. So if you're looking at this from new, it can be very easy to get things set up. If you're looking at it from the point of view of, you've got a big company already set up with different technologies, maybe you've got some on-premises servers, maybe you've got some kind of on-premises applications that you want to move over to the cloud. It's a whole different story in terms of kind of getting things set up and doing those migrations as opposed to starting things from scratch. So I would say first thing you really need to do is you need to set your expectations. So as I said, if you're coming from it from scratch, the expectation is potentially that we will have a working email client. We'll all have working Office desktop software that can be updated as we need. You might also then want to ensure your data is managed in a secure manner. You might need to ensure that you have sovereignty over that data, or that you understand where that data is in terms of data sovereignty. So from a GDPR perspective in Europe, at least, you need to ensure that it's at least within Europe and even better within the UK. So Microsoft 365 can give you all of this and more. Okay, so again, set your expectations, have your musts, do it maybe in a Moscow style. And if you're not familiar with Moscow, it's where we basically say, these are the things that we must do. These are the things that we ought to do, should do. These are the things that we could do. So it's just kind of breaking that down into what is really essential and what is a nice to have. Okay, so once you've got your expectations down, you can then start to think, and I'm not kind of spelling everything out here because you can all read, so I'm not spelling everything out here. I'm just kind of conversing in terms of what we see as these points. Once you've got your expectations, you can then start to do your research in terms of, does Microsoft 365 actually meet the bill? Is it going to be easy enough for our users to use? Is it going to be interoperable with maybe some software we've got running? Is it going to be possible for us to move everything to the cloud, or do we have to have a setup where we've got to mix and match between things that are on site and in the cloud? So once you've got your expectations, that can really kind of drive then the type of Microsoft 365 implementation that you're going to have. And unfortunately, there is absolutely no way that we can go through all of the kind of foibles of a setup in this session. And in fact, all of those kind of setup questions, unfortunately, even though we can have a basic checklist in terms of best practice for an Office Microsoft 365 setup, I would definitely say, in every single case, there is a need to analyze those requirements and bring up a kind of personalized plan, mostly in terms of, how that implementation is done and what is actually included in that implementation. So there we go. So we've set our expectations. We've decided then that, Microsoft 365 is capable of doing what we need to do. And I may actually just move the order of these around slightly. And actually just put that one there. So I would say then that, you might have understood that Microsoft 365 can do what you need to do. But then it's really kind of important to look at the licensing within Microsoft 365. So you may be thinking to yourself, yep, it can do everything that I need it to do. But then you really need to look into the licensing to see, what are the actual applications, for example, that I really need to have in order for things to work in the way that we expect them to. You may need a higher level license to do some things. You may need a lower level license to do other things. So you really need to look at that licensing model in order to understand the types of costs that you're going to have ongoing to manage your Microsoft 365 licensing in order for it to perform in the way that you want it to perform. And there is a Microsoft page with licensing information, and I am going to just bring that onto the page here. So there we go. So this page here, for example, so this is for business, and we'll just look at business applications for the time being. So there is also the enterprise level. So that will be an additional tier where there are additional enterprise grade things around those licenses. But let's just look at the apps for businesses at the moment. So these are businesses generally up to around 300 people. Even if you're a business that's less than 300 people, you may decide that there are some enterprise features that you need. But, these are the kind of value for money in terms of if that's what you're looking for. And, kind of in terms of the value that you get, you really get a lot of value with these business. If you're under 300 users, you get a lot of value for your money for these business licenses. And we can take a quick look at what we get. So the basic level, for example, you get your Microsoft Teams and you get web. This is probably the main thing here, is you get web and mobile versions of the Office application. So you don't get a downloaded version of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. Again, you get what's called standard security. The security around this stuff is really good on a basic level. But as you go up in terms of tiers, there are additional kind of security products that you can get on top of that standard security. And then if we go up slightly, so Microsoft 365 apps for businesses. So as you can see, we get the desktop versions there of the Office apps with premium features. It's still standard security. So it really is, this one is just, and you need to be careful here as well, because this is the Microsoft 365 apps for business. So you might actually realize that there is Exchange here and there is no Exchange here. So what that means is that with the apps themselves, you don't get access to the email platform in the background. So Microsoft 365 Basic gives you that email platform in the background. So Exchange is where your emails would be stored. and then Outlook is the client that will connect to Exchange to bring your emails to you. So here we have the Outlook app, but we don't actually have the Exchange kind of service in the background. However, if we go to the next level, business standard, that will include the Outlook app, so desktop versions of the apps, and it will also include Teams features, for example, to do webinars. So we've been through that on one of our other 30 tips. And also you start getting access to some of these services. So especially in the business premium level, you start getting access to much more kind of advanced security features. So Intune, where you can manage end user devices, so laptops, phones, and you can make sure that the information is secure on those devices. And you also get access to this Azure information protection. That means you can protect files and information even after it's left your organization. So you can set certain security levels on documents, and you can make sure that those are enforced even after the document, for example, has left your organization. So these are really good value. They do provide very good value for money in terms of the costs for those. And like I said, there is another kind of enterprise level that you can go to. So you can actually get additional security and compliance features, especially in the enterprise grade level products. But we won't look at those at the moment because we haven't got enough time in this session. And so that's, in terms of licensing, that's really important to look at. So I'm now going to go back to the other points. So you've decided you want to set, you've set your expectations, you've done your licensing. Next thing to do, set up a trial, kind of see how it works, get your kind of main users. So here we go. So, Microsoft themselves will tell you about this. So try a free trial subscription, and you can try that for a month, and then you can extend your trial to a certain extent. So, if you're not if you haven't had time to really look into what you need to do, you can extend that trial. You can try different subscriptions. The one thing that I would mention as well quickly about licensing is it's not a one size fits all. So there may be some users that require a higher level license. There may be other users who would be more than happy with the online versions of the apps, for example. So you can certainly save money by mixing and matching different types of licensing, and you can make sure that your, those users with access to kind of very sensitive data potentially might need a higher level of license in order to put compliance and security around the features that they're using. Just be quite careful in terms of when you're mixing and matching licenses, because some of it will come down to you to manage what features people use in terms of, and you should make sure that they always have the correct license to use a certain feature. So you can manage that through groups and roles, etc. But you do need to kind of think about that in advance to make sure that people don't use features that they're not licensed for. Some things will stop you, so some things will mention to you when you're trying to set them up, but other things won't, and you just need to ensure that that doesn't really get to be the case. There we go. Okay, so lastly, so you've done your trial, you've already set it up, and then I would say when you're kind of beginning to then get that setup in place, you need to then make sure that you're thinking about which domain you're going to bring in to Microsoft 365. So you can keep that domain wherever it may be, and you can point Microsoft 365 to use that domain. And because Microsoft will give you, to begin with, they will give you an on Microsoft domain. So it finishes in onmicrosoft.com. And you can happily use that domain. You can certainly, kind of carry on with that and see how it works. But obviously, there will come a time when you want to get, for example, your main domain into Microsoft 365. So again, if you're just starting out, it's a bit easier. If you're moving from a different system, or if you're moving from on-premise, you need to make sure that you manage that process properly. And there are lots of steps to ensure that kind of nothing breaks in the meantime. So when you move that domain, you don't want other things to break in the meantime. Okay, so those are just some basic kind of setup questions. Licensing, again, very important to think about. But number one there is set your expectations. Make sure that you've got an outline of what you need to achieve by implementing Microsoft 365. And then as you're going along, you can measure against your expectations to see how well you're doing. Okay, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I know it's the weekend, so I'll let you get back to whatever you were doing. And I'll just kind of mention quickly, as usual, the website address there going across the bottom of the screen. More information for you, information about our services. There are lots of videos, blogs, and kind of more information coming out. And also sign up to the newsletter just to get kind of information like this that's hopefully useful in terms of technology use and making the most of technological investments. All right, thanks very much, and we'll see you again tomorrow, hopefully. Okay, good night.